I know that I became very isolative. I was on the computer, and before that I was on consoles all the time. I didn't interact with any of my friends, not that I had many, but it was something that took up increasing amounts of time in my life. It was almost as though I didn't have a life outside of that, outside of the computer, outside of the video games. And I know I've had problems with the computer video game characters and thinking they were real. Actually, once I thought that they were romantically involved, that one could have been my girlfriend or whatever, and really a lot of it is the way that they're constructed, the video games these days. It's so powerful that it can really ruin your life if you're really obsessed with it. It's very hard to get out of. I don't know really if anyone can overcome it completely, especially since computers are so much a part of today's society that it's impossible to avoid them. I sort of think that even though you can't really define addiction, you have to have some sort of guidelines for people to be able to know when there could potentially be a problem. Such as if you have some drug use, what's the difference between sort of regular usage in a controlled manner and being a full-blown problem with it? You have to have some ideas and guidelines set forth, and I think that's what we're trying to develop now is some sort of set, well, not necessarily set, but some sort of semi-standardized sort of guidelines that allow people to be aware of when there potentially could be a problem. Because the key that we define addiction as in terms of regular sort of drug addictions is it something that is hampering with your everyday life?
We want to talk about something like the internet or computer usage. You know, for me, it seems like it's something that should be almost a leisure activity. When it becomes a problem where you can't do what you're supposed to be doing every day because you're constantly on the computer, you're constantly playing games, then it's a problem.
World of Warcraft, for example, people can often become more involved in that than their real lives, and often end up completely neglecting, for example, career or school, and using World of Warcraft as a substitute for socializing. And that, I think, is something that doesn't happen with other forms of addiction.
I wouldn't say I'm addicted to computers, but I'm addicted to other things. And there's this doctor that's actually based out of LA named Kevin McCulley, and he actually came up with a definition of addiction. And there's certain parts of your brain that control addiction, and that there's a midbrain and the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is the part of the brain that is there for your emotions, your morals, what you believe, what makes you you. You know, like basically you is your frontal cortex, and then there's a midbrain, which is your instincts, like eat, sleep, sex, like anything that's human, like things that you can't really necessarily control. And the misinterpretation of addiction is that they believe that addicts are like bad people, criminals, immoral, and it's actually your instincts that's affected. When you use a computer, or when you shoot up, or when you go shopping, something that you find addicting, it's something out of your instincts. There's people that play computer games 24 hours a day, and it's something that they've been doing their whole life, or they've been doing since it ever came out, and it's just the same addiction as a drug. They get that dopamine fix from computers. Others get it from Coke. My take on it is that there's a huge difference between a computer user, and a computer addict.
I was obsessed with it pretty much. It was a sort of escape, basically, for me, at which I could be someone who I really wasn't, because I'm very socially awkward, very socially shy, and I was very much one of the more respected people out there with a level head and all of that in World of Warcraft, and so people liked me.
Like, with the usage and the addiction comes this whole culture and community, and that's something that's hard to recognize from the outside, because you look at someone and you see someone in a dark room staring at a screen, and you're seeing someone very, very isolated. You're seeing someone in their own world, not communicating with anyone. But to that person, very often, they can basically, be communicating, feel they're valuable with these other people, feel like they're part of this culture, feel belonged. And I think that's something that's hard for people to identify if they're not a part of. And I think that's where some of the hostility comes from, is where people can get very upset because they're like, you're spending your time alone. You're in that room, that dark room with the screen in front of the screen all the time. But to the person participating in that, they're, actually doing things and activity and life and experiencing this, people. But, obviously there's a barrier between it, because ultimately it is just that person in a room.
Video Games Anonymous. I read something about that recently. Very impressive. Your AA meetings, or NA meetings, they help people with alcohol or narcotic addictions. What better way to solve the issue of video game addiction, where one of the main things is isolation, getting involved in your own world, than going to a place and being able to discuss your problem with other people with the same problem, and being able to relate to not only their specific actions or their specific experiences, but their feelings, because that's what really connects all of us more than anything, is our feelings.
Whenever, I've been engaged in a relationship where there was, a passionate friendship, it was like, none of that was in my mind, and I wasn't ever thinking about the computer when I was really a part of the person where I was thinking about them a lot. I think another important thing is just generally honesty to yourself and to other people, and building relationships that are honest and aren't, trying to put on a front or trying to gain something, but real honest relationships. And I know for myself that also includes just like regular one-on-one therapy. I know, like, I've gone through troubles and have been doing therapy but haven't been honest about it, and I was basically got nothing out of it. But as soon as I just started speaking my mind openly in that sort of setting, in a one-on-one setting, and actually, speak my thoughts and see someone else respond to that, it sort of somehow interpersonally just sort of stimulated development.
I think that also one of the most important factors in being able to overcome internet addiction is, really finding like friends in the real world to help motivate you to break out of the kind of artificial social networks online. Being able to find activities to help sort of create a motivation to do things offline.
I think that the 1950s is a perfect example. All of the children were out in the streets playing baseball or something like that. I think we need to get out to like a park and play more. I think that's one of the antidotes, is just having human contact at an early age.